Now, I wanted to have a look at the astrology of some of the most recent and the most tragic terror attacks that we've been having, just to see if astrology offers anything and the kind of transits and planetary movements that are going on at the time. I'd just like to say my condolences to everyone who was involved, the people of Manchester, but particularly the families of the people who've passed away, and definitely thoughts to the people still in hospital and badly injured, because I think they often don't get mentioned enough. It's an appalling thing against children, young girls, and so targeted to affect the most vulnerable and the youngest. So it's a dreadful thing, and I've been thinking all the time about it and about all the people. So I just wanted to start by saying that. Now, Sarah Shepherd on Facebook was saying to me that she's been noticing, and I think it has been mentioned in some of the Express mentioned it as well, is how often these attacks happen on the 22nd of the month. So I've got a little list here of all the attacks that have happened on the 22nd. So for example, Lee Rigby was also the 22nd of May, but that happened in 2013. The Belgium attack, which was on the Belgium airport and also near the train station, that was quite a gruesome one. High death toll, 32 people. That was the 22nd of March. That was last year. There was also the Westminster attack of this year, the 22nd of March, 2017. The person driving cars into people and then trying to stab people. Okay, the failed tube strikes that happened back in 2005, the failed ones were on the 22nd of the 7th. People always remember the 7th of the 7th, when unfortunately 56 died in what was a successful attack, but there was also the failed attack on the 22nd. Then I've put in there Lockerbie, because I remembered that event and I thought, I'm sure it's around the 22nd. It was actually on the 21st, but because I've looked into Lockerbie quite a lot, the bomb was designed so that it would go off when the plane was over the Atlantic, because there was really no way that they wanted all those suitcases of cocaine and of the money and things like that to be found. It would have been far better for the perps to have it go down over the sea, and it was meant to go down over the Atlantic. If it had gone down at the time that it was designed to, it too would have been on the 22nd. Now, before I go on to, oh yes, and another recent one was the Ottawa attack. If you remember, in Ottawa, in the capital of Canada, there was a soldier who was shot on Parliament Hill and a gunman was on the loose. So what struck me as I was looking through all these ISIS terror attacks is that there have been so very many, particularly in 2013, 14 and 15. And in Europe here, we tend to always be focused on the attacks happening in Europe, but really there's one for every day of the week happening in the Middle East, and particularly countries like Pakistan. There's also Nigeria, Iraq, Somalia. These attacks are, unfortunately, Egypt as well, these attacks are unfortunately far more frequent than us in the West actually realize, and by ISIS. And at the moment, ISIS are even fighting, the military in the Philippines are having to prevent ISIS from taking over a whole island in a major city. So we do have to broaden our perspective on this problem. It's not just a European problem, and I think sometimes our politicians say it's an attack on our way of life. Well, possibly it's the motivation for the European attacks, but there's a wider ideology here that is trying to take hold, and their enemy is really anyone who's not them, who stands against them. Their enemy is really civilization, order, democracy, or even if it's not democracy, even organized government. And you will see here that one of the other attacks that happened on the 22nd was actually in Saudi Arabia, where they had a major attack. Now, I wouldn't have thought ISIS was striking there. There was a particularly deadly and ferocious attack in China. That was on the 22nd of May 2014. There were 5 assailants in a car that were throwing grenades out the car. The car was packed with explosives and they drove into a shopping centre. Quite a lot of fatalities there. And so, as coming back to the number 22, I've noticed that 22 is prevalent in the UK in terms of attacks, and also in Nigeria, because although Nigeria do get a huge amount of attacks from Boko Haram, the number 22 stands out. There are at least 5 attacks that have happened on the 22nd of any month in Nigeria. So 22 is certainly a number that's relevant in the UK and Nigeria. So I decided to have a look and see. Linda Goodman did quite a good job of summarizing what the ancient Chaldeans had said about the numbers. And 22, if I can read it to you, and then we'll have a little look at what it said. It was quite interesting. It said, the symbolism for the number 22 is a good man blinded by the folly of others with a knapsack on his back full of errors. So that kind of immediately said to me, the suicide bomber, you know, the knapsack on the back full of errors, which you could interpret as a bomb. And a good man, well, not necessarily a good man so much, but blinded by the folly of others. Yeah, I do think that these people get ensnared into this whole ideology, into this whole, they get radicalized, they get ideas put in their head, and although they might not necessarily be good men to start with, as it says here, I don't think they're the worst, because it's the people behind the scenes that don't even get caught who are doing the instilling of this ideology into them and putting ideas into these people's head who may be, you know, mentally ill and have problems or vulnerable in the first place, having these ideas put in their head. So that sort of made sense. And then it also said about offering no defense against a ferocious tiger which is about to attack him. It's a warning, this number 22, of illusion and delusion, and also represents good people living in a fool's paradise, a dreamer who only awakens when surrounded by danger and when it's too late. And it warns of mistakes in judgment and of placing faith in those who are not trustworthy. I think that also is very enlightening in terms of how we in the West are looking at, are we going to do anything too late when we're already surrounded by the danger and it's too much? And have we, as the public, put our faith into people who are not trustworthy and who are not really going to deal with the problem? Are our governments really going to? Are they capable? Are they going to work with other governments to tackle what really is a worldwide problem? I don't know, but I did find the information about number 22 very interesting. Okay, let's go back. I've done a chart for the time of the Manchester attack. That's this one up here. We're also going to look at Nice and at the attack in Berlin at the Christmas market. Now, when I'm thinking about terror, I was, in my head, before I looked at the chart, I was thinking about looking for Mars, which is always the planet of anger, of violence. So I was thinking Mars is going to be prevalent. I was thinking the sun and the moon had to be afflicted, particularly by the outer planets. I was thinking of looking for influence of Pluto, also of Scorpio, also of Aries. And I was thinking of maybe the angles of the chart or one of the luminaries being connected to one of the morbid planetary alignments. And when I say morbid, I'm thinking of Saturn, Neptune. I call that the car crash aspect, because nothing good ever comes of it. In fact, I'm going to be doing another blog on assassinations, and you'll see that Neptune square Saturn is extremely prevalent in those. So I would be looking for that as a morbid connection. And also because Pluto square Uranus is having so much to do with the extremism, with the turmoil, both socially and politically we're going through right now, I would think possibly that would be triggered. So if we go to the chart, the first thing that struck me on the chart of Manchester is Mars. We mentioned looking for Mars on the descendant in Gemini. Now, Mars in Gemini does sound kind of one of the more benign placements of Mars. It could be in Aries, it could be in Scorpio, maybe that would be a bit more fierce. But Mars in Gemini is one of the factors you quite often find in charts of serial killers. So I think what Mars in Gemini represents is the deviousness and the cunning that is required for this kind of atrocity. What Mars in Gemini also said to me, highlighted in Manchester attack, that there may have been an accomplice, because Mars is the dual planet. So that's also, interesting to me. Now the next thing, Mars, it wasn't only on the ascendant, but it was opposite Saturn, where Mars is on the descendant, it's opposite Saturn on the ascendant square Neptune, the morbid aspect that I talked about, so often prevalent in assassinations. It's not only, it's on an angle, which we're looking for, and connected to Mars. Now, the ruler of the 8th house, which is the house of death, is the sun, and it's here in the 5th house of children and entertainment, so I don't think I need to say more there. The other interesting thing is Venus is conjunct Mars. Venus is conjunct the moon. So that said to me an image of women, mothers and children, and also an image of the enjoyable night that everyone was having prior to this terrible atrocity. So because the midheaven is in Libra, the midheaven ruler Venus is also square to Pluto, again representing, we said we were going to be looking for Pluto. Again, Pluto is representative of anger, of extremism, of violence. So we were looking for a connection to Pluto. We got it right there. Pluto as well in the 1st house. So often when people have Pluto in the 1st house, for example, it often indicates a cataclysmic event early in life, an accident or some defining event. So I think for having Pluto in the first house does represent an attack on the person, a defining event. I said as well we would look to see if the luminaries, how they were doing. Well, Mars is square Pluto, so Moon is square Pluto, so Moon, a important luminary planet, afflicted by Pluto. The North Node, which I always look for, is in the 8th house. So again, we've got an emphasis on the 8th house, the house associated with death. And the Sun is squaring that 8th house. So Moon and Jupiter is also afflicted by Pluto. Now Jupiter is a planet to do with religion, Pluto the planet of extremism. So the fact that Jupiter linked with Pluto says to me, yes, definitely a vibe here of this kind of religious, ideological extremism or political extremism, because it's not really religion, it's the ideological and political extremism that we're looking at. So not only are the Sun and the Moon afflicted and the angles afflicted, there's no help from Jupiter because it's afflicted as well, and there's no help from Venus, who's just sitting there pretty innocently with the Moon. What else I looked for in the chart is to see if the fixed stars, Castor or Algol, were influenced, because when those are triggered, those fixed stars, it often represents something very unpleasant. And there we have Neptune is opposite Castor and Moon is square Castor. And if you want to read the definition of Castor, it's violence, accidents and troubles. So to look at that chart, there was nothing good going on, and it definitely signifies violence and death with the extremism shown up there. Jupiter is in the 9th house as well. Jupiter in its own house, emphasizing that kind of ideological element to this particular strain of violence. So if we move along there to Nice, that was 14th of July, it was Bastille Day, it happened last year. Again, what have we got? Well, I said look out for Mars. We've got Mars conjunct the Moon in Scorpio. So again, Scorpio is one of these signs where we expect, I said in this first chart, you'd expect to see maybe Mars in Scorpio. Well, we've got it here, conjunct the Moon. Violence, particularly Moon against families. The thing that's interesting about this chart as well is Jupiter is on the North Node, and that signifies to me the kind of holiday, celebratory atmosphere that there was, you know, on Bastille Day. It's a public holiday and people were having a good time, summer holiday location. So it says, again, we've got that going on. Now, what was going on with the Sun? It was opposite Pluto, square Uranus. And I did say that we would be looking out to see if that particular aspect was triggered, because that would fit into the whole kind of thing that we have going on with the social change. The Moon was also in its detriment. So Moon is exalted in Taurus because it's in Scorpio, it's in detriment. So the Moon is further weakened in this chart. The ascendant ruler is Aquarius, and Aquarius is weakened by its square to the Sun. The Uranus is weakened by its square to the Sun. Again, we have the morbid aspect. Venus, Saturn square Neptune is on the angles again. Here we've got Saturn on the midheaven, and here we've got Neptune, the house of sacrifice, and also the house of transitions, also the planet of transitions to another life. Neptune here in the first house. So not only was Pluto-Uranus triggered, but also the morbid aspect of Saturn-Neptune. Plus we've got Mars-Moon in Scorpio, and house associated with violence. Also, I've written quite a few things. So we've got what the Sun is afflicted by Uranus, the Moon is afflicted, the ruler of the chart Uranus is afflicted, Pluto, which rules the 9th house, so that I would say again represents the extremism. 9th house represents ideology. Pluto represents the extremism, so we've got the link to that. So this is again a very strong chart, not much good going on it. There's no help to the Sun or the Moon from Jupiter or Venus to bring a little bit of luck and a little bit of hope to what was going on here to try and avoid it. It all looked pretty, all pretty dire. The other thing was Neptune on the South Node. Now, the South Node is another one of those points in the chart that are often a problem. Neptune on the South Node was prevalent when Diana was killed, and it's also something associated with assassinations. So again, I think this chart depicts really this targeted assassination, killing of innocent people. And we'll just go on to have a look at the chart for Berlin. That was on the 19th of December. Well, again, this time we have Neptune on the south node again, squaring the moon. So again, moon in trouble. And what I'm going to be doing in a few vlogs' time is having a look at the charts of O.J. Simpson and Nicole Simpson. And during those charts, I did some research into killers, serial killers. And again, the moon, it's always the moon that's important for these people who have murderous intent. And I think that signifies as well that something is deeply wrong within their subconscious, within their psyche to do that. But again, we see it's the moon, and again, it was the moon and the south node were triggering the, guess what, the morbid connotation of Saturn square Neptune. So once again, you see that one active. The moon is prevalent in this chart, and it also rules the 12th house of transitions to the other life. Talking about Pluto, we have in this chart is Mercury is conjunct Pluto. Now, Mercury also rules the 3rd house of transport, which is cars, lorries, and again, in this case, it was the lorry that was the murder weapon. So I think the fact that Mercury and transport was linked to Pluto sort of typifies that element of it. Mars rules the midheaven, and Mars is in Leo on the north node. Now the north node, when Mars is on either one of the nodes, it often leads to, as I've seen in the charts of serial killers, an explosion of violence. It can also be in the charts of sportsmen where they are using that instinct to win or athletic instinct in a positive way, but it's also the Mars on the nodes is also indicative of killers who are using that anger they feel in a very negative way. They are projecting it onto others. They are making their anger other people's problems in a violent attack. I looked again to see if Castor, the fixed star, was triggered, and it was by no less than Uranus and Jupiter. And let's see, and you know, once again, there was no sort of positive factors going on in this chart to alleviate the heavy degree of negatives. So while it's rather hard to predict terrorist attacks beforehand, because every different location, you'd have to go through all the different locations and maybe even the different times of day to see when things are triggered. But in general, I'd say at any time when Mars is afflicting Sun or the Moon, or the north node, alongside one of these combinations of Saturn and Neptune being triggered, or Jupiter or Pluto and Uranus being triggered, is a time when there could potentially be a problem. You would look then at the moon for the timing, well, because you know sometimes these planets are triggered over a period of days. You could look for the moon to see at times it's either in Aries or Scorpio or conjunct Mars or Pluto to narrow down the timing. But on a positive note, it won't be too long before Neptune and Uranus are not in square aspect anymore. They'll move off that, and then they won't be able to be triggered regardless of where the planets are. And the other good news is Uranus has now moving away more quickly from Pluto. They won't be in square anymore, so we can totally rule out those being triggered, because in all these charts both were triggered, you know. So I would say to avoid these possible situations, it'll probably be easier to avoid with those moving off. Hopefully we'll go into a phase of fewer terror attacks, but that probably won't be to do with any major fantastic interventions by our leaders who, well, sometimes I wonder really what they are up to. But anyhow, this was, and these are absolutely terrible, terrible events. They happen all over the world all too frequently. And it needs a global concerted effort to crack down on this ideology, which is it's sucking people in, turning them into monsters, and creating a terror for people who really have got nothing to do with politics and nothing to do with any wars that have gone on in the past. They're absolutely nothing to do with it at all, and it's desperately cowardly attacks. Okay. Thank you for watching that again, and I just hope as I'm looking at this that we're not going to be seeing any more major terror events, especially with the planetary positions changing as they are. Hopefully they'll calm down. As I was saying at the beginning when I looked for the 20 seconds, it has been particularly bad in 13, 14, 15 and 16, and that is the time when particularly Pluto, Uranus have been doing this particular square. So it is possible things that could get a lot better, could quieten down. Hopefully things quieten down in Syria even better. So the next vlog I'm going to be doing is O.J. Simpson, Nicole Simpson. If you've been watching the BBC reenactment of that, it wasn't the BBC, it was done in America, but BBC over here have been showing it. Absolutely brilliant series, and I really do recommend it. It's 10-parter, extremely accurate portrayal of the trial. So that inspired me to have a look at the charts just to see how revealing they were. So thanks for joining me, and stay safe, everybody. Everyone just be vigilant no matter what.